Good morning. I spend most of my life doing a lot of public speaking, but I think I'm probably more nervous today than I've been for quite a while. And it was very emotional coming into the college today, although it's very different. And so the old building used to be back there, and things. It's still quite special. And I'm going to try. Paul talked about journey, so I'm going to try and talk about the journey. But I have to tell you, it's a little bit like a random walk. And but hopefully, what in the end I'll be able to say, I'll probably bore you for a few minutes first, is that certainly the industry I work in has an enormous amount of opportunity for you. And I'm lucky enough to work with a lot of very major clients around the world. And I split my time 50-50 roughly between New York and London at the moment. And what I would say is that every single company that I deal with, every single brand, every single advertising agency, media agency, everyone is faced with the same issue at the moment. And that's they actually have too many of the wrong people and not enough of the right people. Seriously. And what everyone is missing is enough really young talent who really understand the world that we live in at the moment, understand and are equipped to deal with the world as you move forward, but actually have quite a broad view. And those two things, the depth of understanding and the depth of understanding about digital technology, about the way that media works, about the way in which people use technology now as part of their life, and have a broader, I would say business understanding, but a broader life understanding to be able to put things into context, is absolutely what everyone is looking for at the moment. And I'm lucky enough to work in an industry that is at the heart of a lot of the change that's going on. And Andrew and I haven't actually even spoken to each other and say hello. He works in retail. But obviously, the biggest thing for the brands who sell to retailers and the retailers, one of the biggest things that's facing them at the moment is this thing. And this thing is changing almost everything. So, let me say, I actually, although I was here last in 1978, that's because my sister came here and I sort of, I ended up coming out. I actually left in 1976, so I left a year after Paul. 1976 was a completely different world. And I came out of college in 79 and came out of college into a pretty awful recession. And one of the things that you guys are going to do is you're going to come out of college into a pretty awful recession. It is tough out there. But trust me, as Paul said, there's no ceiling. I think it's not easy. And there are no actually really, really simple things that you can do. But there are a number of things, in my view, that if you try and focus on, then you can be genuinely really successful in this world. Because as I say, that actually it's not even there's no ceiling. The barriers to you being successful are actually going away, not coming in. So I'm going to bore you for a couple of minutes and sort of tell you a little bit about how I got there, just for context. As I say, it's a bit of a random walk. So, like Paul, I went to Stopsley. I hated almost all of it. I didn't enjoy school much at all. I came to sixth form college and I absolutely loved sixth form college. I actually found it just a I don't know how or why, it was just a really wonderful place to be. I had a great moment in my first year where we had, believe it or not, it was treble English on a Friday afternoon. It's not exactly. It was a fairly warm summer's day, and Mrs. Booth was the teacher, and she used to give us a little break for 10 minutes halfway through. So we went, got a sort of cup of coffee and sat there, and I thought, I'm not going back. So, you know, I carried on playing cards or doing whatever I was. And then I waited half an hour to the end of the lesson to sort of sneak back in to go and get my books. And I walked back in there, and she was there. And I was like, oh, you know, and I'm gonna, you know, and I was ready for it. And all she did was she just looked at me and said, I'm just really disappointed. And of course I then sort of went zzz, that big. And, you know, she sat down, she talked to me for a while about, again, it's what, you know, what you put into life is what really matters. Because you can't expect anything out if you don't put anything in. So, you know, as you'll see, there'll be a few cliches between now and the end of this talk. But I sort of, that actually really motivated me to work a bit harder through the rest of sixth form college. And somehow miraculously, I scraped into university. I didn't know what university I wanted to go to. I just, you know, but in the end I applied on. I didn't actually apply to university because I didn't think I was going to get the right grades. But I applied to Lancaster on clearing because a girl I knew was going there. That's it, and it was a long way from Luton, and she was good looking, and all those various other, you know, really strong academic reasons for choosing Lancaster, and I got in, and I had great fun at university. And then I left, I say, into the middle of a recession. I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. And I spent the next 5 years doing 3 jobs for which I was completely and utterly unsuited. Actually first went and I did my graduate, graduate conversion chartered accountancy. I thought I was incredibly clever going and getting a job in chartered accountancy. It was only after I'd been there about 3 months I realised they'd employ almost anybody because they paid you so little and charged you out so high. But I absolutely hated it, and I left. And I actually got a job, believe it or not, selling yarn, selling wool. I had no idea. I was vaguely interested in fashion, and I sort of was vaguely interested in getting a job in fashion. And so, but it was a recession, and in the end, you had to get what you could get. And I absolutely hated selling. It was just, I couldn't imagine doing a job that I would hate less. The only thing I really liked about it was you had a lot of freedom. So you could, you know, just pretty much structure your own day. I think through a bit of luck here and a bit of luck there, I was reasonably okay at it. I just had to work pretty hard at it. And then I very fortunately got offered a job in the same industry by someone whom I'd met to become the marketing manager of a new brand that was launching. And that was the first moment at which I started to actually get into a job that I really, you know, started to have empathy with and started to enjoy and started to find I was actually quite good at. And I think that's one of the things that I'd really like you to think about. As you're sat here, honestly, you don't really know what it's going to be like when you're working. You actually have to work a hell of a long, you know, you work a lot of hours. Paul would say that I work too many hours, which is probably right. But that's because I love it and I'm passionate about what I do now. But you don't really, as you sat here, you have an idea probably of some of the things that come naturally to you and some of the things that are hard work. But it's not just the work, it is the structure of a working life. It's the people you work with, it's the culture you work within. And all those things you won't really know the moment that, you know, bang, I like this, I really like this. And you shouldn't actually get despondent when, you know, if you're in something and you're working hard at it and you're making some progress, but you don't really like it. You know, keep going, look around for what else is out there, etc. So anyway, so I got a job and I had to move to Manchester, which I really hated. You know, and it was sort of, you know, it was sort of vaguely quite fun. But I started to get some incremental experience. And again, the other thing that I did is I did actually work pretty hard. And I was, you know, I was very much into and trying to understand the nature of the industry I was in. And it's a really funny thing, because what I learned in fashion and textiles in the 80s has really, really helped me working in media and advertising over the last 20 years. And one of the things is that in 1979, a number of you, I don't think anyone will know, but in 1979, the fashion textile industry in the UK was the second highest employer after the government. Over 2 million people were employed. And by the end of the 80s, almost all of that had disappeared. What was really interesting is, if you look back at what's happened in fashion and textiles in this country, back then, it was all about manufacturing. It was all about mass manufacturing. You know, and we were sitting on huge factories that had been built 100 years before, with machinery that was 100 years old, that was all geared up to produce 50,000 red V-necks, one length and one colour. And the world had started to change, and people had started to want to be much more individual about their choices. And industry, and that industry in the UK at that time, found it incredibly difficult to change. Incredibly difficult to change because there is the legacy of big machines, but there is also the legacy of people's mentality. This is how it's always worked, and this is, you know, so therefore, why won't it work again? And this is absolutely true story, and I think it's about 1987 or something like that. I did a presentation to the board of a company then, it was called Coats Viola. It employed 67,000 people, it was big, and I'd come up with an idea, and I was literally told in the middle of the board meeting, why don't you back to London and go and sell 50,000 red V-necks, which is exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Seriously. And that business went bust about 2.5 years later. As it happened, in the last 17 months, I got promoted 5 times and got put into different brands and said, right, this is the brand we're really going to back. You know, we've taken on board your ideas. You make it work. You've got 3 years to make it work. And then 3 months later, they'd close it down and promote me and put me into another one, which was incredibly exciting in some ways and incredibly debilitating in others. But what I really learnt from that period, right, was the destructive nature of not taking decisions, and of not taking risks, and of not backing your judgment, and of actually failing to understand the changes that are around. I then, for personal reasons, I left the industry, actually, but I'd learned quite a bit about branding. I needed to be in London to be with someone, and it was actually you know, these things. It was a girlfriend I had, and she got cancer, and I left. I'd been travelling a lot, and decided, you know, right, we can't do that. I need to get a job in London, and I got a job with a small branding agency, and it was just a 28 person business, just a little agency, and I absolutely loved it. And you know, my job was to go around, and if we could sell a project, go and talk to big brands about, you know, how they were repositioning for a new market, etc. And as part of that, I had to do a presentation to the Bass Brewers board meeting, executive board for Bass Group. And they were having a strategy away day, as big companies do. And so I did this presentation. Afterwards, this guy came up to me and said, "We've just started a media agency. Would you come and talk to us?" And it was three guys who'd broken away from what was then a big advertising agency in London called WCRS to form a little small media agency, 7 people, and they'd taken one client with them, which was Bass. And so I went and helped them in terms of how they positioned themselves, etc. And then I did a little bit of work for them for about 6 months. And then I decided I was going to go off travelling. So, age 32, I actually took the best part of a year off and just went travelling. And I came back and I was sleeping on my mate's floor. And I'd phoned around a couple of places, applied for a couple of jobs. And one of the places I'd phoned was this little media agency. And I phoned up Jerry and I said, "Look, I'm back. Any of your clients need a marketing director?" Because I thought I'd quite fancy doing something like that. And he said, I don't know, but maybe we do. And I said, I don't know anything about media. And he went, "So what?" So I went, all right. So I went in and had a chat to him. And I took my CV. And this is a true story. I handed him the CV and he went, "All right, okay, you went to school." Right? That's literally what he said. And then he said, "Well, do you want a job?" And at the same time, I'd actually been offered marketing director of Touche Ross, which was a firm of accountants. And they were going to pay me twice as much money. And all the status and everything else. But I thought, I can't go back and do it. I can't go and work in that. And this was, I think there were 13 people at BBJ, a little agency called BBJ. And so I said, right, okay, I'll do that. And I joined. And I joined on 29th of April 1992. Just so, yeah. So we then got acquired by a holding group, a UK holding group in advertising called Aegis. And they acquired 75% of us, and we kept 25% for ourselves. And then we actually sold out 100% in 1999. And what's actually happened then, believe it or not, is that Jerry, who employed me, and myself, he's now the CEO of the PLC. I guess I'm sort of like number 2. I run all of the Americas and I run all of Europe, Middle East and Africa. So I've got about 10,000 people reporting to me. We've just sold the business for $5.2 billion. So about 3.4 billion pounds. To a Japanese company. We're over the last 3 or 4 years, we've had nearly treble the organic growth rate of the industry, twice that of our nearest competitor. We've actually won the biggest media agency review ever globally, which was actually General Motors, believe it or not, including Vauxhall. And we won that about just about a year ago, which was $3 billion in its own right. That's media spend. And so it's been quite an amazing journey. So how's it gone from, and just to give it sort of context, I speak at the World Economic Forum, I've just been made non-executive director of The Guardian, etc., etc., etc. Right? So how could that happen? How could that happen from hating Stopsley, not knowing what I want to do, randomly, working in textiles? How have I ended up doing that? And I think there's a few things there's lots of things I got wrong, by the way, and that's one of the things I would actually say is resilience. I do a lot of work with MIT Media Lab, and MIT Media Lab are experts in networks and network theory. And one of the things that they'll always say is actually the most important strength that a system or a network or anything can have is resilience. So the one thing I would actually say to you is that all of you, at various points, unless you're extraordinarily lucky, are going to have some tough times. And you'll have tough times at work, tough times in your career, tough times in life, and quite often, where it goes horribly wrong is when those things all coincide. But resilience is critical. Also, coming back to what we want, what whole of industry wants from people like you, is take a broader view. The world has become unbelievably specialised. Unbelievably specialised. So in our group, we have search agencies, we have social agencies, we have mobile agencies. We have media buying, we have creative, we have web build, we have user experience. There's about 5 different kinds of web user experience now. So the world's become incredibly specialised. But what everyone wants is someone who can see broadly. So one of the critical points that has enabled me to, achieve my potential, but actually exceed it, is actually what happened in, partly through what I saw happen in textiles. And what I saw happen in textiles was I didn't get focused on, absolutely always the minutiae. What was happening in textiles was manufacturing was moving from long run into short run, taking what had happened in the car industry around modular manufacturing, and actually started to take in terms computer-aided design. So I thought that was quite interesting. And I'm not actually, I'm a technophile, but I'm not brilliant at using the stuff. My 13-year-old has to tell me how to really, resync my iTunes properly and all that sort of stuff. But I then sort of got interested in it. And when I got into media, in 1993, I did a talk and a presentation about something called the internet. And everyone thought, what is he smoking? What is he drinking? What is he doing? What are they talking about? And it was 1993, and I did a lot of historical curves, and actually said, it's an inevitability that this technology will supplant traditional media. And everyone thought I was an idiot. About 1995, 1996, everyone started to think I was a genius, because, wow, it's happening. In 1999, when the dot-com crash happened, which is ancient history to you but feels like yesterday to me, everyone realised I was an idiot again. And in about 2003, when it started to pick up, everyone started to think I was a genius again. Or none of those things are true. But what I recognised and what I saw and what I stuck to was that there's a certain amount of creative destruction that always happens. I had the potential to have the greatest amount of creative destruction possible. So what you've seen and what we're experiencing, and part of the reason that we're in, the recession we're in at the moment, is the inability of industry, the inability of the leaders of industry to understand the long-term trends of what has been happening for 20 years. Paul talked about Facebook. I'm actually on the Facebook Global Client Council. It's a sort of advisory board to Facebook. And they don't know what's going on. I can assure you. I work very closely with the senior people at Google. Who knows what happened to Google 3 weeks ago? So almost for the first time, Google quite seriously missed its financial target. And for the first time, and I've worked with Google for 13 years almost, they're like, they don't quite know what's going on. They don't know quite what's going on because of this. Because this is actually supplanting the desktop, this and tablets and various other things. In the US at the moment, the splintering of media is actually really creating significant issues for the TV industry there. You've got significant issues for the TV industry here and around the world. You've got the ability or inability of businesses to cope with the fact that you and I can, we can search for something, we can check with our friends when we're in the aisle, when we're at the point of purchase. We can put that up against a barcode and we can see whether it's cheaper down the road, which is probably one of Andrew's issues, or certainly it's, for the big box retailers, for the people who sell large goods and electronic goods, that's a huge issue. So we're living in a world which is very transparent. Who does economics? How many of you have had to go through the turgidity of perfect competition? Has anyone gone through perfect competition? Oh, good. So back in, so I did economics. Back in the day, it was all about monopoly, oligopoly, and perfect competition. Monopolistic competition, that was it, and perfect competition. We are living in a world of almost perfect competition, where you, as consumers and brands and retailers, can actually pretty much see the same thing. It's ubiquitous, infinite amounts of information that are easily capturable. This has a huge impact on every single business in the world and gives you a huge opportunity because you're brought up in it and you're natural to it. I'm going to shut up in a minute, but I'm going to just say 3 or 4 things. Because I've got a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old, and it was really funny. I was actually in New York, and we were going out to a football tournament, and I was with one of the other kids' mothers, she's a independent film director, and she's great, and one of the kids was on their phone playing a game, and she turned around and went, get off that, you've got your homework to do, you should be reading your book, all the usual stuff that probably you're told. But anyway, we got into this debate, and he said, I can't remember what he said, but anyway, and she said, when I was growing up, we didn't have mobile phones. And I went, we didn't even have a laptop or a computer. And she was like, no. And then her older daughter, who was 15, said, yeah, but how did you send an email then? She's seriously. Whereas, you've got to understand that we had none of that communication. The people who are running a lot of big business at the moment were brought up in a world they had none of that. They don't really understand it. I'm like, I have to live it, breathe it, I work in it every day. So I sort of understand it a bit, but I don't understand it as much as you do. So how do you take that knowledge, that advantage you've got, and use it over the next few years? So I think the key things are, imagination is more important than knowledge. Right? That's not what I said. Who knows who said imagination is more important than knowledge? Anyone? Einstein. You can Google it. Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge, and that is true. Take your knowledge in and then think about it. One of the things that I was told, one of the few things that I actually really learnt, someone actually said to me once, actually when I was at university, 1 hour spent thinking about something is worth 10 hours spent writing about it. 1 hour spent thinking about it. Genuinely think about it. When I look at my kids, the one thing that really worries me about young people that come into our business is they don't actually think much. They know everything. They know 10 times what I knew when I was your age. You don't actually think about stuff. And it's actually relating different things to other things that is the really, really important skill. Because that generates intelligence, that generates wisdom. So it's not just about what you know, it's about how you relate it. So start really thinking about stuff. The other thing, honestly, there is no substitute for working hard. You know, putting in those extra yards, really putting in the extra yards to you know, make a difference, make a difference. It's up to you. We have a thing, you know, I bang about it all the time. Right? I just say to people, I'm only interested in one thing. Just try and be the best you can be every day. If you can try and be the best you can be every day, then you're going to be successful. Then you'll add something. Then you'll get something out. That's all you can do. You know, there's loads of luck, there's loads of bad luck. But if you're trying really hard and you're trying to do the best you can, then you're going to give yourself the best opportunity. And then the last thing, which I find, you know, if I look here, you know, what I see is enormous diversity, and an enormous diversity that a lot of industry is missing. So, yeah, if you have the misfortune of actually just, you can sort of, you know, I think I'm on there somewhere. I'm very passionate about diversity in all its forms, and if you Google me, I'm on the diversity committee of the World Economic Forum and all that sort of stuff. I'm on that, not on that because I am a Guardian reading champagne socialist, but also it's on what you should be really confident about, all of you. Well, you know, and also very confident about when you interview, when you go and talk to businesses, in any shape or form, is that the broadest possible diversity, not just in terms of ethnicity, sex, sexuality, but personality, skills and capability. Businesses need to have a real mix of people. I think we have to have a real mix of people and a real mix of opinion. And you are about to enter into a world of big data. And you've probably heard all about it and everything. And everyone, trust me, everyone is grappling with data. No one can crack it yet. But the thing about data is it allows you to really, really start to understand some of those trends that we used to intuitively have to think about. I'll just give you one test. There was a test that was carried out to prove this out. Everyone knows Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, yeah? Yeah. They got 2 control groups of 100 people. One of them were very homogenous, right? Because there is a human nature thing called homophily where people aggregate around each other, which is why boardrooms tend to be full of white, middle-aged men. And they had one very diverse group. And in terms of intelligence and blah, 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 well, everything else was the same. And then, of those 100 people, they then started a series of questions on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I did a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire test with these 2 control groups. And you know the way it works. They asked 100 questions. Another 100 questions, what was really fascinating was the group that was, they answered the question and they asked them how they got on. And the group that was homogenous thought that it had got about 70% right. And the group that was very diverse thought that it got about 45% right. And the reality was the group that was homogenous had got about 50% right, and the group that was diverse had got about 75% right. So not only was it more intelligent, that actually the other group, although it had performed worse, was sure of itself and thought it had done better. And what you'll come up against, because you're young and you're there, is you'll come up against it about push through those barriers. Push through those barriers. Yeah? And just be the best you can. So I'm going to hand over to Andrew, and afterwards I'm very happy to answer any questions, and sorry if I've talked too long, but I could talk for hours. But anyway, thank you.
absolutely fantastic.